Hello, Reader Pops. I read romance books like it was my job this month. Well, actually, kind of was. Welcome to my May reading wrap-up. I'm gonna go through every single book that I read this month. It was a confusing but also amazing month. I hated some books that a lot of people love, found some new books, we have some new releases, we just have a lot of stuff going on in here. So this should be a very, very, very fun reading wrap-up, and I just really need to get into it because this is a lot for me. First one I read was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This was her new release in January. I've read a lot of books by her and they're always hit or miss. Like some of them I give 5 stars, some of them I just don't like at all. This one I gave 5 stars, and this one I think actually does feel kind of different from her other books. This one felt a little bit more mature in the writing style. Like there weren't as many cheesy lines that made me cringe. I'm trying to decide if I want to be like harsh in this video or if I want to be nice in this video because I was kind of mean. But I gave this book 5 stars, so that's good. I'm sure you've heard about this book, but basically this mother gets out of prison and she wants to reconnect with her daughter in this town, but nobody wants her to reconnect with her daughter because of the reason that she went to prison. And then she accidentally starts a romance with the guy that has access to her daughter, and that creates a whole lot of family drama and kind of a forbidden romance, like they shouldn't be together type of thing. I thought it was beautiful and it was deeper than just like, ooh, meet cute and blah blah, because all Colleen Hoover books has this kind of like deeper emotional tug. So yeah, 5 stars. This was a hit for Colleen. Okay, next, this is like the only not romance book that I read. One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I gave this book 4 stars and it's a YA murder mystery. So they're all in high school and they're all in this detention class. You've got the jock, the popular girl, the nerd, the drug dealer, all these sorts of stereotype kids. And then one of them dies before leaving detention, and then all of them are pitted against each other as the murderer. You get to see the POV of every single person, and there's tons of like drama that gets revealed on this website, and the drama is very juicy, and it was pretty fast paced for me, and it was really cool to see the different POVs all the time. So I gave it 4 stars, and I kind of want to read more by Karen M. McManus because other people were saying that her books were really good. So if you want a YA murder mystery, something not romance, I highly recommend this book. I feel like I'm being so sterile because I'm like, okay, I have to get through every single one of these books and my brain needs to remember what I read this month. Okay, next I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is the long-awaited new release by Emily Henry. She wrote Beach Read, People Will Meet on Vacation. We all know this. And this one, I still remember the day that they revealed the cover, and every reader in the world took a collective breath because we all love books, and the book is called Book Lovers, and her book covers are just always beautiful. But basically, we've got One Summer, 2 rivals, it says on the back. We've got Nora, who is this like New York City shark of a businesswoman who is a literary agent, I believe, and her sister wants to take her to this place called Sunshine Falls, North Carolina, and she has this whole bucket list that they want to do there, and they end up running into this guy named Charlie, who she had run into a couple years back, and they didn't really have a good experience together. And Charlie is this book editor, and they're kind of like similar personality types where everyone thinks that they're cutthroat and they only care about work. And so we've got a little bit of character development in that department. Now, I really liked it. The banter is always great. I was trying to think objectively about this book. Like, okay, if this had a white cover and I read it and I didn't know Emily Henry wrote it, what would I rate it? Because I'm so biased towards Emily Henry. I think I gave this a 4.5 stars, but my one critique, I thought this was gonna have the vibe that like they are writers. Okay, obviously they're not writers. I don't know. I thought this was gonna have more of the vibe that they really bonded over loving books, but there's not really that aspect of that at all, you know? So I feel like this is a little deceiving. But if you didn't have that in your brain, it's really good. It almost feels like older for Emily Henry, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think for the summertime, it's really fun. And like, I'm gonna read every Emily Henry book ever, but I don't really think it holds a candle to Beach Read or even People We Meet on Vacation. Like, I think this is my least favorite book by her, but banter, humor, great. Vibes, great. 4.5 stars. I think I need glasses for real, bro. Okay, next I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was hopping on the Taylor Jenkins Reid bandwagon this month. I read Malibu Rising and Daisy Jones and the Six by her, but it seems like everyone is going through her backlog of other books, and I am so glad that I picked this one up. This book is heart-wrenching, and it's amazing because basically she gets married to her high school sweetheart. They are madly in love, and then he goes on this trip to Alaska or something like that, and he dies in a helicopter crash. Cool. So then she has to heal her heart, all these things, and eventually a few years down the line, she reconnects with another high school sweetheart and they get engaged, and then all of a sudden she gets a phone call that her original husband never actually died and he survived. So now she's like, do I rekindle with my original husband or do I stay loyal to this guy who I just got engaged to? And it's so good because Taylor Jenkins Reid makes you understand both points of view. And at first, like in the middle of the book, you genuinely don't even know who you want to pick. And that's great because sometimes with like a love triangle of sorts, you already know who you want and it's just frustrating to read. But with this book, you are right there with the main character. You have no idea what she should do. It was so good, and her writing really is great. She just has the most quotable lines in a romance book ever. Let me just like see what one of my tabs were. I started tabbing my books this month, if you can't tell. Aww, I really should like reread my tabs more. I don't know, 5 stars for this book, y'all. Big fatty 5 stars. We've got some 5 stars sandwiched in between some really bad books. So many people liked this book, y'all. This book was being recommended over every platform, and I kind of like started following Bookstagram people, so now I'm kind of like more in the loop in that sense. And this book was everywhere. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This thing is a actual brick.
Enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine.
Yeah, I gave this 2 stars. Don't kill me. But here's the thing. Books like this that, in my opinion, are written kind of badly is not the point of the rating. Cause like, no one is picking this up thinking that they're gonna get some profound insight into life, commentary of any sort. They're just looking to pick it up and have a good time and get entertained. It's like watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, okay? So I'm not giving it 2 stars because I think it's written like Wattpad or anything like that, because I don't think that's the point. But I genuinely, the whole reason this book was ruined for me was because of the character, the main guy, love interest, Knox. He had 5 vocabulary words. One was the F word, one was almost puked. One was baby. Sorry. He only knew those 5 words. And then he would he was like the grumpy guy. So he would just stomp on over in his big boots and be like, who am I beating up? And so that combined with like Wattpad writing, I was like, what am I reading? This is not good. But no offense if you like it, because then the book did its job. It's just not for me. It doesn't mean the book is bad, because if other people like the book, then does that technically mean the book is bad? No, it just means it wasn't for me. So on the same note, I DNF'd this book, and this is literally one of the most loved romance books ever. So I don't want to get hate mail for this one, okay? But I DNF'd Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. Literally on the back, it says one of the top 100 romance novels of all time on Goodreads. And I'm just gonna be honest, I don't understand how that happened. I don't get it at all. Like literally at all. Number 1, it was insta-love, but not only was it insta-love, the second that they started doing stuff, I was like, I'm gonna puke in my mouth, because y'all just met. What's going on? Y'all have exchanged maybe a handful of sentences and maybe not even that much. What is going on? So then I closed the book and I said, you know what? This is not for me, but I'm going to continue to let it be for other people, but I will not be ever talking about this. I'm sorry, I don't understand how this book is so popular. Okay, but let's talk about a book that I think is so underrated. Let's talk about books I like. Okay, I feel bad talking about books that I don't like. The Roughest Draft, look how cute, oh my gosh, by Austin Sigmund Roca and Emily Wibberley. This is so cute. These are co-authors and they're married, and this book is literally about co-authors who had a falling out with each other, never spoke again, but they made this incredible best-selling book, and everyone wonders why they stopped writing together. But in the book, they each have like their own partners. So everyone's like, did they stop writing together because there was an affair? Like what happened? And so they just cannot get these authors to write together again until finally they do have to write again. There's a forced proximity where they go to Florida to write this book. And obviously at the start, they absolutely hate each other, and you get to figure out why they started hating each other and what went down. And honestly, I think if people pick this up and don't give it a high rating, it's because they expect it to like be a rom-com, because this was recommended to me as someone who loves beach read this book, but this book is not really a rom-com. I think it's more of a romance literary fiction, but it was so good. I love books where they're writers. It was so romantic how they were like, I don't want to spoil it, but like they're writing like about each other, and I could not help but think, is this the most meta book of all time? Because it's co-authors writing about co-authors who in the story have this habit of like writing the characters of each other into their books and like confessing their feelings and stuff. And I was like, is this book, do you see what I mean? You just have to read it, but it was so good. Would you look at that? 5 stars, super underrated, perfect for summer. I definitely agree, if you like beach read, you'll like this, but don't expect like comedy or anything like that. So good. Okay, then I continued to read amazing books. So next up, Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I literally don't know how this book exploded so much, because this is her debut novel. Maybe if you get published by Berkeley, that's what happened. But yeah, this was compared to People We Meet on Vacation and Love in Other Words, which are some of my favorite books, everyone's favorite books. Also, I think the characters' names in books are so important. And in this one, their names are Persephone. Well, that's kind of funny. Her name is Persephone, and then his name is Sam. At least one of them has a cool name. But basically, they have this falling out. They're not talking to each other for like 12 years, which I think is exactly like People Meet on Vacation. And you get the flashback scenes and then present day scenes, and you don't know what happened in the past and why they're not talking in the present. What is that noise? All of the past scenes, they're at this lake house and you're basically just watching them fall in love. And then in the present, she gets a phone call that their mom died and she should come out for the funeral. And this is where they start reconnecting. And literally every trope in childhood friends to lovers happens in this book, which I love. the best trope. 5 stars. And I really liked the reveal. Sometimes the reveal ruins it and you're like, that was so stupid, that's why you didn't talk, but this one made sense, so 5 stars. Great summer read. I am perspirating. Next I read Funny You Should, oh, by the way, now I'm getting into all the books that I read in this video where I read 7 romance books in 7 days, so go watch that video if you want a super in-depth, my experience, my reactions as I'm reading and like more critiques and stuff like that. But I read Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I love this book cover, so does the entire world, and it blew up on TikTok. So basically we have this writer, love books with writers, remember this, and she gets hired to do a profile of this movie star who's gonna be the next James Bond, and no one thinks he's going to make a good James Bond, so then she like goes to write this piece on him, and then he invites her to come to this movie premiere, and then they go to the after party together, and this whole piece explodes, goes viral on the internet, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like what happened that night? Like, you're literally just a writer, and then did he fall in love with you as the author? All of this stuff. Basically people are like, if you like celebrity fan fiction or like any celebrity in books, then this is great for that. So you have the then and then now perspective because they don't talk for 10 years, and then she's going to do another piece on him, so she has to reconnect with him. And overall it is really fun. It is very addicting, and once you sit down to read it, the pace is very great. And like I said, I love the books where they are writers because you see like little blog posts that she does sometimes, and I feel like it always just gives like kind of more of like a more heartfelt, deep emotional connection. So that was great. But my only critique and the reason it's not 5 stars is they really only knew each other for like maybe 5 or 7 days total, and like all this stuff is happening and you're like, you guys literally don't even know each other. But so yeah, I think I gave this a 4.5 stars because I was just vibing out to it. It was a good vibe. I mean, 4.5 stars, obviously you know it's good. So then I read The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. Also, I learned a new term because basically Sarah Adams writes closed door romances, and then the opposite of that is open door romances. When you guys ask me like, recommend books with no spice, if you look up closed door romances, that's what that means. And that was very helpful to learn because now I can actually look up that term and find books much easier, because I would look up like no spice and I would get basically no results. So closed door romance. But basically she is a ballerina and he's a football player. This is not YA, by the way. They're like full on adults, and they've just been friends for so long. So this is friends to lovers, and it's basically like, can you get out of the friend zone? And it also has fake dating, which I love fake dating, and their chemistry was just undeniable. This book was like a sweet little cupcake with rainbows and unicorns, and it was just so sweet and happy. I would give this 4.75 stars. I said I wanted to give it 5, but then like there's other books that have a special piece of my heart, so I really should make like a books that are 6 stars in my heart, because I really think we should have a 6-star scale. But like this is like basically 5 stars, okay? But like 4.75, so good, highly recommend. Okay, this next one is like kind of hilarious. This is the new Christina Lauren release, Something Wilder. They wrote Love in Other Words, The Unhoneymooners. They are the queens of romantic comedies, right? So yeah, this is not really a romantic comedy. This book literally reminds me of The Inheritance Games. What? If you know The Inheritance Games, that's like a mystery, treasure hunt, Knives Out vibe. So how did Christina Lauren write a book like that? I do not know. They wanted to do something different. I understand. They wanted adventure. They wanted, man, but when you're like, when you think you're reading from these authors who have only ever done romantic comedy, am I reading the right book? So yeah, this book has tons of plot twists. They are out hiking in the mountains of Utah, and they start looking for this treasure, and then things just start going crazy. And there's so many plot twists. My neck was breaking trying to look every which way at where the plot was going. There was still romance, obviously, but it definitely feels like a subplot in this book. It's also in third person, which was so difficult for me to get into. Like Elin Hilderbrand writes in third person, and it's very easy for me to get into. This one, however, was kind of difficult for like the first 170 pages. I wasn't really having that much fun, if I'm gonna be honest. Overall, I gave it a 4 stars, but you definitely need to know what you're going into and don't expect the typical Christina Lauren romantic comedy, because that is not what this is, and it's kind of hilarious. If you're gonna have to spend $26 on it, I honestly don't recommend it. But if you read everything by Christina Lauren, or if you like hiking and mystery and like adventure, Indiana Jones, then that is this book. Who would have ever thought Christina Lauren would write something that reminds us of Indiana Jones? Okay, next I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, y'all. I finally read Sally freaking Rooney. I own 3 of her books, haven't ever read one of them. I'm sure you guys know Sally Rooney from Normal People, but literally everyone and their mom reads her books, and they either love her or hate her. She doesn't use quotation marks around her dialogue, which I found so difficult in Normal People, and I DNF'd it, and in this one I had no problem reading it. I don't know what changed, but this is very much like a literary fiction with romance subplot, but I loved it. And honestly, this is what made me realize that I want to dive into other genres other than romance coming into June, because I loved the literary fiction of it all. Although it is kind of like more depressing, like it's not very happy, but you really just get to see the inside of the brain of Frances, this girl in her 20s, and it's kind of a coming of age story. So if you're like in your 20s and you have no idea what you're doing with your life, read this and you won't feel lost at all. Yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. It doesn't really make me want to read her other books because I feel like normal people would be so similar to this one, but I'm so glad I finally read something by her and that now I know I really do like Sally Rooney's writing. And then lastly, I tried but failed to read Meet Me at Midnight by Jessica Pennington, which look at this cover. I was like, oh, this will be perfect for lake vibes. I'll get to recommend it in my summer book recommendations. It's YA, it's probably like closed door, that whole thing. I was like so excited to recommend it, but I DNF'd it. Honestly, I think it would be a good book. It was just like the last book out of my romance video where I was reading 7 in a row. So I think I just was kind of worn out. But if you want a lake, oh, also they just prank each other the whole time and the pranks felt very juvenile, but they were supposed to be like almost going to college. And it just didn't, I feel like the ages, it didn't feel like they were their age. But if you're younger, if you're like 13 or something and you want to read a romance book, I highly recommend this one. But yeah, DNF'd it, but probably not because of the book, probably because of where I was at in the month. Okay, I think that is it. I also read Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood, which is like a tiny little novella on Kindle. And you can go see my thoughts on that in this video because I want to read books out of my comfort zone. So please recommend me your favorite book that is not romance and definitely does not have any spice in it. That is what I want to read this next month. So I'm so excited to make videos about it. Follow me on Instagram to see my updates as I'm reading throughout the month because I definitely post books a ton. I basically was like a bookstagrammer for a second there. So go follow me on there, follow my main channel, and I will see you guys somewhere else on the internet. Bye!